Hi, I'm Kristen Oaks-White.
And I'm Avery Davidson. Thank you for joining us for This Week in Louisiana Agriculture, the only TV show bringing Louisiana farmers and consumers together every week.
There is now a document which states Louisiana and Cuba are ready to trade agricultural products. Louisiana Commissioner of Agriculture and Forestry, Dr. Mike Strain, signed the memorandum of understanding while in Cuba for the first week of October.
That's a big deal because Cuba imports 80% of its food at a cost of $2 billion a year. Now it's up to Congress to take steps to open up trade with our neighbor 90 miles off the U.S. coast.
The Capitolio in Havana, Cuba looks a lot like the U.S. Capitol, but the political process practiced inside has little in common with what goes on in Washington, D.C. That's why Louisiana Commissioner of Agriculture and Forestry, Dr. Mike Strain, signing this memorandum of understanding between Louisiana and Cuba to pursue the trade of agricultural goods is a bridge that could cross that 90-mile gap between the two countries.
It's about relationships. As you can see today, from the first visit that we came in July and today, we've developed some very friendly and good term relationships with the senior Cuban ministers.
Relationships which could be profitable for both countries. Strain says next year, Cuba will buy $75 million worth of rice. Prior to the revolution, Louisiana was Cuba's #1 source for rice. Right now, much of the rice Cubans eat comes from as far away as Vietnam.
We are perfectly poised to be the predominant player in these markets.
Despite the embargo imposed by Congress, Cuba does buy some agricultural products from the United States. It's only through cash sales, no credit. Louisiana Governor John Bel Edwards says by paying cash only, Cuba received $1.5 billion worth of goods from Louisiana over the last 10 years.
This is going to put us in a position to where we can resume that relationship, but we don't have to wait because there are things we can do right now. We already, over the last 10 years, Louisiana is the state in the United States that trades more with Cuba than the next 5 states combined.
Congressman Rick Crawford of Arkansas had an amendment before Congress that would allow banks to extend credit to Cuba for the purchase of U.S. agricultural products. He withdrew the amendment 2 months ago with the promise that Congress would reconsider it after the November elections. Obviously, Louisiana has a lot to gain from that because so much of what farmers grow in the Midwest comes down the Mississippi River for shipment abroad, Kristen.
Well, Avery, you went with Congressman Crawford to the trip in April and then also again with Commissioner Strain in July. What is your take on these events?
Well, mind you, this is my opinion and my opinion only, but I understand, and maybe this is why I was a pretty good reporter, I understand kind of both sides. I understand why folks who had family in Cuba and lost everything after the revolution want reparations from the Cuban government. But I also understand where we have a lot to gain through trade and why trade would help out the Cuban people. Because it's kind of like, let's say you have a next door neighbor, Kristen, who works for the meanest guy in town, does not give them as much money as they need, but the children there are hungry. Do you not give them food or sell them food or help them out because they work for the meanest guy in town? And that's sort of the way I think about it. This is our next door neighbor. We got to try and find some way to help them out. And I understand, again, that there's a lot of history here, but it's been 60 years. Let's start to work through it. Again, my opinion.
Well, that was a very good analogy and a way to explain it to people. It sounds like we're just going to have to wait and see who wins this presidential election for what the outcomes are.
We'll wait and see.